Coming up on the Angus Report, Cheramie Viator talks about matching genetics to production environments.
Then, a close look at feedyard vaccination.
Join us to meet the newly selected 2019 Angus Ambassador.
And finally, Alan Moczygemba, the American Angus Association CEO, tells us what's in store for this new year. This is the Angus Report. Welcome to the Angus Report. I'm Bob Cervera.
And I'm Clint Mefford.
The first week in this new year, we're talking about the relationship between genetics and production environments. Cheramie Viator, a marketing manager at Westway Feed Products, told 2018 Angus Convention attendees, genetics are not always a one-size-fits-all.
I think it's important that we as producers recognize that we don't always produce genetics that work for everyone. For instance, if I'm a producer somewhere in the Midwest and I develop my bulls on a high energy ration, maybe silage, maybe just a high concentrate diet, and then I decide or I have the opportunity to sell cattle to somebody way out west, maybe New Mexico for instance, I sell cattle to that individual, 6-8 weeks later he calls me and he says, you know what, your bulls fell apart. Well, the reality is the change from that production system of being in a high energy, high concentrate diet, and then we go to native country, those cattle don't have the opportunity to have their energy needs met. So for me, I think it's important that we have to sometimes say when we have a conversation with a potential customer, learn about their production environment. You know, if you actually are honest with yourself and analyze your production environment compared to their production environment, sometimes we just have to say, you know what, I don't think we're a good fit. And that's important to be able to have the ability to say that. One of the things I think we need to understand to stay in business for the long term, often we have to look at the big picture. And it's not about doing what's popular or following what's bull of the month type thing. I think we have to ask ourselves what actually works in our program. What's most appropriate for the longevity of our program? What's most important for the longevity of our customers? There are animals that offer a variation that are more applicable to fit into our programs. So I think it's matching the right genetics to your program is way more important than trying to pick the big spread cattle perhaps that don't fit your program. If big spread works, you need to do that, but maybe you need to be in the mode of searching for optimum growth instead of maximum growth. And when we become honest with ourselves about those things, then we begin to create some opportunity to have our programs in a mode of longevity. I've done a lot of research and just looking at why some cattle operations stay in business for the long term. And if you look at cattle operations that have been in business longer than 50 years, it gets really to be a short list, but there's a commonality with those operations. In those operations, the management teams will tell you that they don't chase extremes anywhere. They don't chase maximums. Instead, they choose to utilize optimums. Sure, they may use an extreme or something that's an outlier to make some genetic changes, but those cattle that they use or the genetics they use are often the cattle that keep them in the middle of the road. Those are the cattle that keep them in business. So those operations that have been around for long term, they have chosen to utilize genetics that are optimums instead of chasing growth to the extreme or any other trait to the extreme. I think just oftentimes those long-term operations have chosen to utilize optimums instead of maximums. I absolutely think that we can have cattle that meet multiple targets. And it's a matter of being disciplined in your selection and discipline in the cattle that you continue forward in your program. We have a wide enough gene pool in the Angus breed that we can find cattle that match our environment and also match our endpoint. So for instance, if you're trying to find cattle that are low forage input, low energy input cattle that can survive on grass, and yet when you send those calves to the feed yard out of those cattle that they can go on and grade, and I think there's genetics out there. You have to be disciplined enough to go out and find those genetics and to utilize them.
Contact your local extension agent to learn more about matching Angus genetics to your production environment.
Many producers throughout the country have started feeding hay and calculating just how much hay is needed for the winter months. Forage quality is an important factor when analyzing hay needs. Higher quality forages ferment in the rumen quicker than lower quality forages, which leaves cows hungrier and increases forage intake. On a dry matter basis, forages below 6% crude protein will be consumed at about 1.5% of body weight per day. Higher quality grass hays above 8% crude protein will be consumed at about 2% of body weight. Alfalfa, silage, or green pastures can be consumed up to 2.5% body weight. For example, a 1,500-pound spring calving cow will eat 8% crude protein hay on a 100% dry matter basis and voluntarily eat 2% of body weight, or 24 pounds per day. However, hay moisture has to be included in the equation. Hay grasses are typically 7 to 10% moisture. Hay waste also has to be included when feeding round bales. Generally, 6 to 20% of a bale is wastage. Contact your local extension office to learn more about calculating hay needs. The USDA's latest steer and heifer grading report shows prime carcasses totaled 9.6%, the highest on record, with choice accounting for 71%. Len Steiner from Steiner Accounting Group said 80% of all U.S. cattle carcasses graded choice or higher. Steiner says that this is a stunning shift from 10 years ago when fewer than 60% of cattle graded choice or higher. The daily livestock report published by Steiner Consulting Group notes some factors to explain the shift toward higher quality. Steiner says, quote, "First, there's the long-run trend in upgrading cattle genetics, a trend that accelerated after the liquidation that took place in 2011 to 2012. The herd rebuilding that started in 2014 appears to have brought with it much better performing cattle and a sharp increase in the supply of high marbled beef," unquote. The number of select carcasses are declining with more cattle grading choice and prime. Steiner says the shift to more prime grading cattle has helped increase cutout values. He also notes the increase in supply of prime has been accompanied by a decline in price.
Brian Vander Ley, a veterinary epidemiologist at the University of Nebraska Lincoln's Great Plains Veterinary Education Center, spoke at the 2018 Feeding Quality Forum about the implications of vaccinating calves on arrival at the feedlot.
We have routinely vaccinated cattle on arrival at the feedlot for years. It's been a practice that's decades old. Exactly how we vaccinate cattle has kind of changed over the years. We've switched types and we've improved our technology in the vaccine world. Just recently, we've kind of questioned that practice. There's some good minds that have started thinking, what are the implications of vaccination, and are we doing as much good as we hope we are? So the studies that I showed today illustrate several examples of situations in which vaccination either didn't do any good at best, or at worst, it actually seemed to harm the cattle. The outcome of the study was that cattle got sick more frequently after they were vaccinated, and sometimes even died more frequently after vaccination. Despite our efforts to encourage cow-calf producers to use preconditioning practices and vaccination before weaning and weaning management types of things like that. So we actually have seen trends in the overall prevalence of respiratory disease in feedlot cattle go up despite our efforts to change things. So we have better vaccines, we have better drugs in terms of antimicrobials, and we have producers that are more aware of what they should be doing. And despite all those things, we have more sick calves and more calves that are dying in the feedlot. So you have to ask yourself a question, and I think a lot of really smart people have done this. They said, why isn't it getting better? And one of the conclusions they came to is that maybe some of the things that we think are helpful are maybe not as helpful, or maybe even harmful. I think the cattlemen in the room today, and most of the people I end up talking with, are always surprised by the idea that a vaccine could hurt something. Most people think of vaccines as something that's really harmless. At its worst, it costs us a little bit of money that we don't get anything back from. But we do have some interesting data that says that at its worst, it can be harmful. I always want to put the caveat in that vaccines are very useful tools, and when used appropriately, and when we expect the right things from them, right? We don't expect them to solve our problems, we expect them to kind of insure us against calamity. Then they do exactly what we hope for them to do. But when applied incorrectly, or at the wrong time, or maybe to the wrong animals, in my opinion, it's like giving them another infection. So they've got a bunch of them already, they're in a fight for their lives literally, and then we just lay one more thing on their immune system and say, hey, deal with this too. One of the biggest misconceptions that surrounds the idea of delayed vaccination is that it's going to make the wheels come off the wagon. It's going to generate this catastrophic train wreck of a situation. I think that vaccination probably doesn't play nearly as big of a role in the train wrecks as we think it does. It's all the errors that led up to that. So how much stress, how much commingling, how much transport, all those things kind of play into how much respiratory disease we can expect. And then there's a lot of things at the feedlot level that actually play a role as well. So we would expect feeding and the intensity of feeding and things like that will change respiratory disease treatment rates. So I think when we look at the contribution of vaccination to either success or failure, it's not nearly as big, or it doesn't deserve nearly the amount of credit that we've given it. In its place, vaccination is a very useful tool, but I think we've put more faith in it than what it deserves.
Contact your local veterinarian for more information about vaccination timing. Stay tuned. More Angus Report after a break.
Welcome back to the Angus Report. The Angus Foundation has once again delivered an outstanding heifer package to be auctioned off at the National Western Stock Show. Eldon and Louisa Krebs of Krebs Ranch have donated this year's foundation heifer, KR Queen 8213. We sat down with Jake Scott from Krebs to talk about this year's elite heifer.
When Eldon and Louisa and the foundation began discussing possibly making this donation, one of the things Eldon came back and told the rest of the family, said, if we do this, we're going to do it with a really good one. And that's been Eldon and Louisa's goal from the very get-go, and I think when people see this heifer, they are going to be impressed with it, with the quality. And one of the unique things, the interesting things, the fun things about the Angus business is that it's so diverse. In other words, within our breed, there's a lot of different definitions of what good is. So for some people, good will be the phenotype, the conformation, the build of the animal. For other people, it will be the EPDs and the genomic profile. Still other people define good as the pedigree and the ancestry. I think no matter how you define good in your respective operation, when you look at this heifer, you'll call her good too. Genetically, this is a heifer that as you study her EPD profile, ranks in the top 3% for her weaning EPD, top 4% for her yearling EPD. Her dollar figures are outstanding with top 2% dollar W, top 10% dollar B. So from a statistical, mathematical standpoint, she really checks a lot of boxes. On the pedigree side of things, it's a really exciting pedigree. A pay weight from the mother of Barstow Cash, the Queen W16 donor, a cow that's done a lot for us outside of just Barstow Cash. And what's unique about this heifer is not only she has that built-in story and that built-in background that comes along with her, but she is the only heifer calf born by that embryo mating here at the ranch. So there's some scarcity and some rarity involved with her too. Of course, phenotypically, we love the heifer. The body, the design, the squareness, the femininity brings a lot of performance to the table. So again, I think she crosses a lot of boundaries within the breed, no matter what your definition of good is. In many ways, the next generation of the family are products of what the Angus Foundation represents. The education and the research dollars that they contribute towards our junior programs, and all of those things are made possible with the help of the foundation. And what we believe and what we encourage other people to believe is that those things don't happen by themselves. They not only take a lot of organization and a lot of manpower, they take a lot of money. And without folks being willing to contribute and do their part, those will go away. And that's something that we want to see sustained for generations to come, including now our children.
And next on the Angus Report, we meet the new Angus Ambassador.
He tells us what he's looking forward to during his 2019 term. Stay tuned.
The National Junior Angus Association Ambassador Program is designed to recognize one outstanding Junior Angus member who will support the production of the Angus breed and the consumption of Angus beef. Cale Hinrichsen of Westmoreland, Kansas, was selected as the new Angus Ambassador at the 2018 Angus Convention in Columbus, Ohio.
I'm now the 2019 Angus Ambassador for the American Angus Association. We went through an interview process that was roughly 10 minutes and then had 5 minutes for questions. And when I sat down with the judges, I just told them about myself and several industry questions that they had and went through that. And then a little while later, we had our presentations, and going over the presentation on an industry topic, mine was beef cattle traceability here in America. And that was a really enjoyable topic to dive into and to give a good presentation on, and to truly try and educate other people, because I had educated myself on the topic, and to truly understand that and then answer the industry questions that they had. When I was up there selected, it was definitely a wonderful experience. A little bit of a shock, but I just think about all the people that have helped me get to this point, and it really is a humbling experience and makes me realize how blessed I am to have the people around me that support me and truly care to help me get to this point in life. With all the hard work that's gone into it and the nervousness up there, and understanding too that there were 4 other exceptional candidates as well. And at this level, it's anyone's game. And I also knew that they were exceptional and they were going to be tough to get around too. And it was a little bit of a shock, because at this level, you never know what's going to happen. But it was an overall good learning experience, and throughout the entire process, it just truly helped better prepare me for life, no matter what the outcome was. I think with now, to me, be a leader of the Angus Association, it's that I'd like to learn from the leaders ahead of me, because that will only help me become a better leader in my own. And without that, I can take that back to my university, to my home operation, and truly learn how to lead other people. Instead of, yes, this was a chosen position. However, when it comes to being a leader, instead of having people forced to follow you, it can help me become the leader that people choose to follow me because of the things that I'm involved in, the things that I'm doing. And I want to lay a foundation for them as well to become successful, because without them and their support, as well as the people that have gone here before me, it's really helped me to reach this point in life. So with my role as ambassador, I'm going to have the opportunity to travel across the country to several beef conferences and be involved with certified Angus beef, as well as the American Angus Association. And the biggest thing is to advocate for the Angus breed, to show their progressiveness, the industry knowledge, and to help educate not only consumers but producers as well on these up-and-coming things. And it just allows me the opportunity to advocate and truly become more knowledgeable, but help other people become knowledgeable within the Angus industry. So my biggest advice for anyone wanting to become the Angus Ambassador in the future is stay up on the knowledge that's happening, not only within the Angus industry, but within the beef industry as well. And also don't be afraid to look into other species of livestock, because there are different things that are happening in there that maybe not have to stay as up to date, but still knowing what's happening, because the livestock industry is connected all over. There's various different breeds, and to have a wide range of knowledge that when you are asked with an industry question that's driven to Angus, but could also incorporate another breed or species, just making sure that you're up to date on all the knowledge and working on public speaking and interview skills and resumes, cover letters, applications, and really just trying to develop everything to become the best person that you can possibly be.
Up next, we sit down with Alan Moczygemba to talk about what to expect from the American Angus Association in this new year. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Angus Report. We caught up with American Angus Association CEO Alan Moczygemba to talk about the year ahead for the Angus breed.
...2018 was a great year for the association. Registrations were over 327,000, which ranks 18th in our 135-year history. And all of our entities had great success as well. At Angus Genetics, genomic testing increased 28%. Today we have over 500,000 genomic profiles in our database, which is 3 times versus any other breed association. The Angus Foundation gave out over $250,000 in scholarships. Angus Media had great success with the launch of the redesign of the Angus Journal and the Angus Beef Bulletin. And last but certainly not least, Certified Angus Beef had over 1.21 billion pounds of products sold this year in their 40th anniversary. So all in all, it was a great year. So 2019 is going to be another exciting year. So we'll start the National Western Stock Show in Denver. We'll be hosting the 76th Angus Bull Sale there on Wednesday, so we want everybody to come out to see that and participate. We expect another great crowd as we have in the past. Denver really starts the year off for us. That's our big event. And of course, we have a lot of things planned throughout the year. From Denver, we'll go to the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, a lot of sales in the spring. Over the summer, we'll have the National Junior Angus Show. And of course, then we end up in Reno at the National Angus Convention in November. We're in the third year of our long-range strategic plan. We'll continue to execute on our strategies with a particular focus on the commercial sector. Last year we launched Angus Link, our new feeder calf program. We expect great things from that. We expanded Angus Source with offering 5 different process verification programs. We launched the Black Book for commercial producers. There's a lot going on in the commercial sector, but across the board we'll continue to execute our plan because at the end of the day, we have to deliver more value, not only to our members, but to the beef industry as a whole.
Well, Bob, a lot of great things in store for the breed and the association.
And we're sure looking forward to yet another successful year.
You bet.
All right, that's all for this week's Angus Report. We'll return next week at this time for more cattle news and highlights.
In the meantime, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Angus TV, for more from the association. Thanks for joining us.